Great Defense. The story of the Great Wall of China. Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. I'm really excited to bring you today's video. If you enjoy my content, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. Let's get started. In the 7th century BC, the lands of China were fragmented and torn apart by internal conflicts. Constant wars between various states and dynasties weakened the nation's defense structures and left its people in great fear. While internal strife continued, the threats from the north were gaining increasing significance. The Turkic tribes, known for their cavalry and the vast steppes, were constantly threatening the northern borders of the Chinese Empire. This situation forced the Chinese governments into a tough decision. If they wanted to protect their lands, they would have to establish a defense line. At first, the Chinese governments began constructing small defensive structures, but these were ineffective against constant raids. It was nearly impossible to withstand the speed and agility of the mounted warriors. This accelerated the search for a larger and more permanent solution to secure China's northern borders. During this period, China's military leaders decided to construct a massive structure to counter this threat. That structure would eventually be known as the Great Wall of China. The construction of the Great Wall was a true engineering marvel for its time. This defensive line would not only be a wall but also a complex military structure, complete with towers, fortifications, defense points, and communication routes. The rulers who decided to build the wall began to involve thousands of workers and soldiers in the project. However, this was not merely a task that could be completed with manpower alone. It also required a large amount of materials and a very serious logistical organization. The construction process consisted of meticulously planned stages that spanned over many years. The basic structure of the Great Wall was made from various materials including stone, brick, wood, and earth. For the technology of that time, stone walls were considered very durable and long-lasting, but wood and earth also played significant roles. Depending on the region, the materials used in the wall's construction varied, adapting to geographical and climatic conditions. In mountainous areas, more durable stones were used, while in flatlands, earth and brick were more commonly employed. The construction process posed great challenges for the empire. Thousands of peasants, workers, and prisoners had to contribute to the construction of the Great Wall. This was a labor-intensive task that came at a high cost. In some areas, due to labor shortages, governments had to force prisoners to work. These prisoners not only provided manpower, but also contributed to planning the construction of defensive structures alongside engineers and workers. At every stage of the construction, the burden on the people and workers grew heavier. They were undertaking a task of vital importance for the empire. Often, the endless labor and long working hours wore out the workers physically and mentally. High mountains, passes, vast valleys, and steppes were among the areas where the wall had to be constructed. Workers faced not only physical obstacles but also harsh weather conditions. In the scorching summer heat and freezing winter cold, these people were not only trying to survive but also striving to build a massive structure. In addition to this, the soldiers, warriors, and engineers involved in the construction of the Great Wall were not limited to building the structure itself. They were also planning various strategic moves to defend this vast creation. While constructing the wall, China continually developed new tactics to prevent the Turkic tribes from breaching the defenses. The building of the wall was not just about constructing a defensive line. It was also becoming a symbol of the empire's power, size, and resilience. While building the wall, the Chinese government sought to instill confidence in their people. The construction of the Great Wall was a process that spanned many years, with each dynasty continuing to build different sections of the wall during their reign. This massive structure grew not only as a military defense but also as a symbol of China's ambition to create a great empire. Over time, the construction of the wall came to represent the changes and challenges faced by the Chinese empire. Each stone, each wall, and each tower carried the marks of resistance and the struggle for survival against the threats faced by China. Over the years, the Great Wall expanded and grew. Initially built to protect the northern borders, this vast structure gradually became an inseparable part of China's cultural identity. While constructing the wall, China did not just defend itself. It also sought to define its borders and reshape its relations with the outside world. The construction of the Great Wall of China was not just a military project. It was a great revolution that shaped China's future, protected its people, and provided them with a sense of security. At the time when the decision was made to begin the construction of the wall, the northern steppes of China were constantly threatened by the Turkic tribes known for their cavalry warriors. These warrior societies rapidly rode their horses across the vast plains of Asia, attacking their enemies suddenly and achieving great victories. Due to their speed and agility, it was incredibly difficult for China to cope with traditional military structures. The Turkic cavalry, often outnumbering the Chinese armies, kept constantly pressuring China's borders. The Turkic cavalry were not just soldiers, they were also powerful leaders who governed their people. These leaders could develop large battle strategies and create fast-moving units. Faced with this continuous threat, China was unprepared both militarily and strategically. The raids by the Turks caused widespread destruction, looting villages, and leaving the military in dire situations. This forced the Chinese governments into a massive defensive move. The Turks became more experienced over the years. Thanks to their cavalry units, they could move swiftly and capture their enemies by surprise, achieving great victories. These warriors, each with their own cavalry, left great traces behind as they attacked, turning Turkish raids into a nightmare for the Chinese Empire. Over time, the number of Turks grew, and they began reaching China's inner regions. These nomadic warriors left everything in flames, instilling fear in the population. The Chinese governments began developing various military strategies to counter these threats. However, China's settled way of life was inadequate for dealing with the nomadic Turks who freely roamed the steppes. At times, the Turks would enter deep into China, causing massive destruction, and then rapidly retreat to minimize their losses. These kinds of attacks constantly strained China's defense system and created an atmosphere of insecurity in the country. The continuous pressure from the Turkish raids led China to make the decision to establish a defense line. The Chinese government's plan to build a permanent defensive wall to counter these attacks. At the time, the necessity of such a structure became even more apparent. However, the Chinese governments did not just stop at building a physical wall. In response to the fast-moving cavalry of the Turks, they carefully selected the structural features of the wall. This wall would not only serve to stop the enemy, but also act as a surveillance tool to monitor the movements of the Turks and anticipate their strategies. The Turkic cavalry developed various ways to overcome the Great Wall. Some parts of the wall were vulnerable and others nearly inaccessible. The Turks often used military strategies and tricks to breach the wall. Due to the agility of their cavalry, they could sometimes target the wall's most vulnerable points. By exploiting the weak spots of the wall, the Turks would sometimes catch the Chinese forces by surprise with great success. Their speed gave them an advantage over the defensive speed. However, these successes were usually short-lived. China began to use the wall not just as a physical barrier, but also as an observation line. With a network of spies established along the wall, the Chinese were able to track the movements of the Turks. Spies worked diligently to learn the passageways and plans of the Turkic tribes. This spy network allowed China to anticipate Turkish attacks, and China's military forces would use this information to set traps for the Turks. While the Turks occasionally fell into these traps, they managed to employ new strategies with each raid. This forced the Chinese government to constantly develop new defense plans. The Turks began moving more carefully and strategically to overcome the wall. Many raids occurred outside the planned timelines, catching China off guard and causing significant damage. In response, the Chinese decided to strengthen not only the wall, but also the surrounding military garrisons. Some of the inner settlements also developed their own ways to overcome the wall when the Turks attempted to breach its borders. The INR pressure from the Turks put a heavy burden on the peasants. The Turks conducted raids on villages and settlements, leaving the people in a difficult position. However, over time, the Chinese people began to resist. Many peasants began to view the Great Wall as a lifeline, at a point where the wall symbolized not only security, but also the coexistence of the people. The resistance against Turkish raids helped strengthen the resolve of the settlements. While China was unable to stop the Turkic raids with just a wall, over time it developed more advanced defense strategies around the Great Wall. The Turks, continuously creating new methods to breach the defenses, found the structure of the Great Wall largely successful in limiting the Turkish threat to China. However, the prolonged struggle between the two sides became more than just a military conflict. It evolved into a war where both cultures continually shaped each other through pressure. Although one of the primary purposes of the Great Wall's construction was to stop the Turkic raids, over time, this massive structure became an integral part of China's cultural identity. The ongoing conflict between the Turkic tribes and China left a significant impact both militarily and culturally, marking a lasting interaction that shaped not only the boundaries of both sides, but also the destinies of the two societies. The Great Wall was not just a wall, but also a symbol of the empire's strategic power. Its construction aimed not only to create a military defense line, but also to demonstrate China's strength, determination, and engineering knowledge to the entire world. Over centuries, this colossal structure, built by various Chinese dynasties, became one of the largest human-made structures in the world. Each section had a unique purpose, structural characteristic, and challenge. The stones, walls, towers, observation points, and gates that made up the wall collectively revealed the depth and complexity of China's military and administrative system. The structural grandeur of the wall was impressive and magnificent at first glance. However, the construction of this massive structure was not only a test of China's defense strategy, but also a project that tested the empire's social, economic, and military structures. Each stone, brick, and wooden material symbolized China's determined struggle and efforts to strengthen itself. The length of the Great Wall has changed over time due to additions and repairs made in different periods. Initially, the wall was thought to be around 5,000 kilometers long, but with subsequent constructions, repairs, and extensions, its total length grew to about 21,000 kilometers. This size symbolized not only the physical scale of the structure, but also China's determination in its survival and protection efforts. The Great Wall, stretching along the vast steppes of Asia, created a barrier designed to protect the people and the empire from northern threats. The wall's structural features were designed with both the natural environment and China's military strategies in mind. Some sections rose as flat walls across plains, while others were constructed steeply in mountainous regions. Extending to the peaks of mountains, the Great Wall was designed to make the best use of natural obstacles as a defensive line. This was done to limit the mobility of the Turkic cavalry and provide a significant advantage against them. Additionally, in some areas, small towers, observation points, and walls built around the wall served as early warning systems to detect the enemy's approach. Each section of the wall was built with different materials. Initially, local materials such as earth and stone were used, but later, bricks and more durable materials were preferred. This structure was reinforced with different construction techniques over time to adapt to China's vast geography and climate conditions. In the northern desert and steppe areas, the lower parts of the wall were strengthened with more solid materials to prevent erosion caused by the wind. In the southern regions, the materials were carefully selected to withstand heavy rainfall and humidity, enhancing their durability. The construction of the Great Wall required the use of a vast workforce. This workforce consisted of peasants, soldiers, prisoners, and sometimes local laborers. The construction process not only required technical knowledge, but also the coordination of a massive labor force. The Chinese governments established large organizations to manage the project, directing resources and labor from different regions. This process involved a great deal of labor intensity and resulted in numerous casualties over time. Building the Great Wall was not just an engineering marvel, it was also a reflection of a society's dedicated labor. Many of the workers faced not only physical hardships but also challenges such as food shortages, shelter, and diseases. Every kilometer of this massive structure was built through the hard work and solidarity of the Chinese people. In this context, the Great Wall of China became not only a structure, but also a tangible symbol of the Chinese people's desire for unity and survival. The towers, observation points, and walls surrounding the wall were not just military defense tools. They were also symbols of the empire's strength. These towers were strategically placed to monitor the movements of cavalry, detect the approach of enemies, and quickly alert military units when necessary. Additionally, their resilient structures were designed to prevent the enemy from breaching the wall, even under difficult conditions. Each tower hosted a sentry who observed enemy movements and swiftly transmitted this information to Central Command, organizing China's military strength. The structural size and durability of the Great Wall carried great significance, not only militarily but also as a cultural symbol. Every brick of the wall was not just a line of defense but also a symbol of a people's connection to their history, culture, and society. This structure was both a defense line and a cultural heritage, holding both military and societal importance. Over time, the Great Wall transitioned from being a mere military obstacle to a cultural and tourist symbol. Today, people from all over the world visit to see this massive structure and explore its history. Yet, behind every brick and stone, lies the story of a people's struggle for survival, the defense line built through great hardship, and the display of imperial power. In this sense, the Great Wall transcended being just a structure, becoming the main character in a story that echoes through the depths of human history. One of the key factors in the construction of the Great Wall was not only military strategy, but also a reflection of China's governmental structure and the strong will of its emperors. Building the wall was not just about providing military defense, but also about establishing social order, controlling the population, and defining the empire's borders. Beyond this massive structure, each part of the wall symbolized a governance approach and the desire to solidify China's power. The Chinese governments viewed the construction of the Great Wall not merely as a military defense line, but also as a project symbolizing the state's dominant power, governance strategies, and the emperor's authority. This is evident in the wall's structural features. The construction was not only meant to keep enemies out, but also to control the people of China, maintain internal order, and reshape the empire's borders. Emperors, by overseeing the construction of the wall, did not only direct the people to focus on the defense line but also succeeded in controlling local governments and society. The Great Wall transformed into a structure reflecting every aspect of the emperor's will. In this context, each section of the wall was designed to assert a ruler's sovereignty, strengthen the loyalty of the people, and demonstrate the empire's power both inwardly and outwardly. The workers involved in the construction of the wall were mostly peasants, prisoners, and volunteer soldiers. However, this project was more than just the labor of soldiers and peasants. Each construction project was also an opportunity for an emperor to reinforce their administrative power. Emperors used the construction of the wall as a form of social engineering. Every worker was not just someone placing stones, but a figure showing their loyalty and allegiance to the emperor. This was both an economic and social strategy for the empire. During the construction, local people and workers worked under the compulsory labor conditions set by the emperors. This reflected the harshness of China's feudal structure and governance system. Most workers faced the risk of death, and many lost their lives due to malnutrition, diseases, and the challenging working conditions. However, these brutal practices were seen by the emperors as necessary sacrifices to secure China's borders. The Great Wall should be viewed not only for its military and engineering achievements, but also as a crucial strategy in how the government monitored and controlled society. Emperors used the wall not just as a physical barrier but also as a tool to regulate the lives of the people. For example, in areas surrounding the wall, specific trade routes were restricted, and only routes approved by the empire were left open. This allowed the government to control trade and monitor economic activities. During this period, the Chinese governments adopted a strong strategy, not only to protect against external threats, but also to block internal threats. Specific security measures were implemented to prevent peasants and rebels from fleeing into the interior of the empire. The garrisons established around the Great Wall of China were not only a defense against external threats, but also served as barriers against internal rebellions and unrest. The high walls and observation towers of the wall were functional in addressing both types of threats. This system also played a role in increasing the government's control over the local population. However, each emperor employed different tactics and strategies during the construction of the wall. One emperor might allocate more resources to the project, while another might attempt to continue its construction with fewer resources to make the process more manageable. These varying approaches to governance not only reflected the emperor's leadership style, but also revealed the effects on Chinese society and the people at that time. The construction of the Great Wall, beyond being a military project, became a means for a government to solidify its power over the people. With each brick, the wall strengthened China's defense, but it also symbolized the emperor's authority, reinforced state control, and ensured social order. This structure, in the eyes of the Chinese people, was also a symbol of the emperor's governance skills and his power. For the emperors, the construction process was not merely a security measure against external enemies, but transformed into a governance tool to rule the population. The Great Wall was more than just a military barrier. It became a reflection of China's power and sovereignty, as well as its social structure and governance philosophy. Therefore, the construction of the Great Wall was a story of both military and social victory, symbolizing the strength of the emperor's will in the face of adversity. The Great Wall also served as a shield against the greatest threats from the north. Despite its colossal size, the wall's effectiveness as a defense tool was ultimately tested over time. The Turks, who posed a significant threat both militarily and culturally beyond the wall, were a particularly formidable adversary. As skilled horsemen from the vast steppes, the Turks would develop incredible strategies to breach the wall. The Turks, especially those living in the northern steppes of China, were a nomadic people with a strong military culture. They constantly formed cavalry units and utilized their horses' speed and agility in battle. For the Turks, war was an inseparable part of life, and every individual possessed at least basic combat skills. Cavalry units formed the backbone of the Turkish army, and they could quickly infiltrate enemy lines. This mobility posed a serious threat to the traditional Chinese army defending the wall. While the Great Wall was intended to keep invaders out, the speed of the Turkish cavalry made the wall an insufficient obstacle in many cases. Over time, the Turks developed various tactics to breach the wall's defenses. They focused on identifying weak points in the wall and found ways to pass through these vulnerable areas. Defending every inch of the empire's land was a difficult task, and the continuous pressure from the Turks led the Chinese government to question whether the wall could be effectively utilized as a defense. Although the Turks were not always successful in breaching the wall, China was aware of this challenge and developed various strategies to counter it. One of the main strategies was to use the wall not just as a barrier, but also as an observation line to monitor enemy movements before they could act. China established a network of spies to track Turkish movements. Agents operating in villages and border regions could gather intelligence on the Turks' troop movements and attack plans. This information allowed the Chinese army to prepare for potential attacks, turning the wall into an essential tool for gathering intelligence, even if it was not the primary defense mechanism. In addition to dealing with the speed of the Turkish cavalry, China also took measures against the Turks' ability to rapidly retreat and relaunch attacks. The Turks were capable of withdrawing their cavalry quickly and then launching new offensives. In response, China set up traps along the border regions and throughout the wall to limit the Turks' mobility. These traps impeded the Turks' swift advance, forcing them to make slower progress and preventing them from quickly retreating, buying China valuable time. The Turks employed numerous strategies over the years to bypass the Great Wall. Sometimes, they attacked in small groups, and other times, they launched large-scale raids to enter China. Despite these efforts, their success was not guaranteed, as the Chinese adapted their tactics to counter the ever-evolving Turkish threat. While China occasionally faced difficulties in repelling such raids, it generally managed to detect and defend against these incursions early on. Thanks to the military bases and observation towers established along the border, however, the Turks continuously developed new strategies and employed various tactics to overcome the wall. The reasons behind the Turks' ability to move swiftly and develop strategies stemmed from their military expertise. The Turks were not only known for their fast cavalry warriors but also for their use of psychological warfare. By skillfully employing the psychology of war, they sought to strike at their enemies' weak points. China struggled to hold off such a fast and agile enemy for long periods. Therefore, while the Turks occasionally failed to breach the wall, they consistently posed new threats to China. To prevent the Turks from successfully attacking and breaking through, the Chinese government made effective use of its espionage networks. These spies tracked the Turks' movements and reported which regions within and outside China's borders would be affected, enabling the government to quickly reinforce its defenses. The defense line of the wall was not just made up of stone walls. It was also equipped with a series of observation points, military garrisons, and secret passages. This setup allowed China to predict where the Turks would attack and to develop military strategies aimed at repelling them. Seeing that the Great Wall was not just a military barrier but also used as a surveillance line demonstrates that the wall was an adaptive tool, not only against external threats but also against the ever-changing conditions of warfare. While the Turks were sometimes successful, these strategies and defenses allowed the Chinese government to continue using the wall not just as a defense, but also as a system to monitor enemy movements. Though the Great Wall served as a barrier against the continuous raids by the Turks, these raids could never be completely stopped. While the Turks occasionally succeeded, they generally failed due to China's intelligence and military strategies. However, this ongoing struggle became a significant trial for both China and the Turks. Over time, China developed more intelligent strategies to counter the Turks' speed, transforming the wall into both a surveillance line and a network of traps. Nevertheless, the Turks continued to discover new ways to breach the wall. The conflict between the Turks and the Great Wall eventually evolved into not just a military struggle, but also a cultural one. Both peoples, with their respective strategies and cultures, constantly fought around this Great Wall, pushing each other's boundaries. This historical process demonstrated that the Great Wall was not only a physical defense line, but also a symbol of culture, military, and strategy. Over time, the Great Wall became much more than a military defense structure. Its construction, spanning thousands of years, shaped by numerous peoples, armies, and governments, became one of the largest and longest-lasting projects of its era. Today, the Great Wall still stands tall as a symbol of the defense of a once great empire, an enduring monument that has withstood the test of time for hundreds of generations. This colossal structure is not just a wall, but also a crossroads of historical processes, cultures, and civilizations. The Great Wall passed through the hands of many different governments over the course of the empire's history. Each period left its mark on the wall, making it a symbol of China's historical resilience and greatness. The wall's length and monumental size are symbols of the Chinese people's determination, their struggle for survival, and their constant rebirth. Every stone, every brick serves as a reminder of the struggles, victories, and losses of the Chinese people. One of the most striking aspects of the Great Wall is that it was not just designed as a military barrier. Every fort tower and watchtower was a part of China's social structure, governance strategies, and cultural heritage. These structures not only served to fend off enemies, but also acted as observation points for monitoring China's internal dynamics. The garrisons and military bases established around the wall ensured that the people living in these areas were kept under control. The rulers who built the wall used it to guide both internal and external interactions, clearly defining the borders and securing every inch of the empire's land. The construction of the wall has carried different meanings throughout each dynasty period. Initially, the wall was designed as a defense line, but over time it became a reflection of China's cultural identity. This structure, which served as a barrier against the threats posed by the Turkish tribes living on the steppes in northern China, also became a tool for maintaining unity and order within China's territories. The wall offers crucial insights into the functioning of the government and how the imperial strategy was shaped. The people inside did not see the wall as just a wall. It was also a symbol of the fear the Chinese people had of their enemies and their warrior spirit. This colossal structure reminded each individual not only of their protection against external threats, but also of their identity and unity. The wall became a unifying force that strengthened solidarity among the people, transcending the borders. Over time, building the wall became a much larger burden for the empire. Civil wars in China, the conflicts between different dynasties, created significant challenges in maintaining and rebuilding this massive structure. The stones, bricks, and materials used in the wall were often carried by local people, with thousands of workers laboring tirelessly to lay its foundations. However, while this construction process symbolized strength, it also faced severe difficulties. Various governments struggled to maintain this enormous structure due to financial challenges, wars, and internal turmoil. On the other hand, the construction of the wall also brought about immense suffering for the peasants, workers, and prisoners involved. The hardships and the cost of the building process claimed many lives. Many workers died under harsh weather conditions and heavy labor. The wall's construction was a process that required great sacrifice from the people. At this point, the wall transcended being merely a military structure and became a reflection of the social structure, class differences, and societal pains of the Chinese people. Over time, with the influence of wars and changing regimes, parts of the wall were abandoned. Many areas began to crumble, blending with nature and eventually being forgotten. However, every abandoned wall, every ruin, continued to exist as a part of the wall's history and past. Today, the Great Wall has transformed from just a military barrier to a cultural heritage, a tourist destination, and a point where the Chinese people confront their past, highlighting its unique place in world history. Today, the Great Wall is recognized globally as a heritage and as one of humanity's greatest structures. It offers modern people traces of the great struggles of the past. This colossal structure holds not only physical but also historical and cultural value. The wall's length and the thousands of years of struggles, victories, and losses hidden behind every stone still carry a power that affects people today. One of the strongest aspects of the Great Wall is that it has stood the test of time despite all these challenges. This enormous structure has deeply influenced not only China's history, but also the history of humanity. Each stone of the wall demonstrates the great faith and determination with which peoples acted, both in terms of warfare and cultural and strategic significance. The traces of the wall encompass many aspects, from struggles with the Turks to China's imperial identity and the people's historical pains and victories. Today, the Great Wall is not just a wall. It is a fusion of the past and the future. People see this structure not only as a military barrier, but also as a tangible representation of civilization's resilience, historical accumulation, and cultural heritage. Over time, this representation has become a value not just for the Chinese but for the whole world. The wall remains a reminder, a warning, and a heritage, reaching from the depths of history to the present day.